Hey, Foot Clan. Before we start today's show, I have got to tell you about one of the coolest tools I've used in the fantasy football world. We're talking about TopDogStats.com. It's completely free, but listen up. These guys, the guys that made it, worked at the NFL for the past 15 years and were responsible for building the football analytics platform. And that's the same thing that the NFL GMs and the scouts and the coaches were using. Now, if you're like me, you don't like poring over a bunch of spreadsheets and grids to try to get fantasy analysis. Well, you don't have to do that at TopDogStats.com because they give you simple, clear chart visualizations on the players, and they deliver fantasy points using the most popular scoring systems, CBS, Yahoo, DraftKings, FanDuel, etc. You can create your own watch list, and it is an incredible tool you have to check out. So visit TopDogStats.com.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Power Smoothie Offense. Give me that Power Smoothie Offense. Innovator extraordinaire.
No, it's what's innovative about it is Chip Kelly's trying to win games with less points than the other team. This is an approach that has never been taken before.
It is the golf approach. Unbelievable. Welcome to Monday, September 21st. We are the Fantasy Footballers. I'm Andy Holloway, joined by Jason Moore and Mike, the Fantasy Hitman, right?
Hey, everybody.
Howdy.
Big weekend of football. Week 2 in the books almost. We got a Monday night game tonight. We'll preview it today on the show. We're going to go through some fantasy rewind, talk about the games. We will go over the StudMuffins and the not-so-StudMuffins on today's show. And we'll see. We'll see what we get into. We got lots to talk about. We got some bets that need to be paid out, at least on the show. And eventually, you'll get watered.
We should just do it right here with all of our equipment. Just throw a cup of water.
Welcome to the final show of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. So, yeah, it was exciting. A lot of crazy stuff. We alluded to the Chip Kelly experience. I don't know why, but there's something about the NFL humbling innovators that it just makes me kind of chuckle. You know, when someone like Bill Belichick can stay the course and kind of be, you know, the stalwart of genius, and then somebody comes in and...
Belichick's an innovator, too.
That's what he's saying.
But I just mean he's not new to the game, you know, like when somebody comes in, I mean, even look at RG3 year one, right? That it was all the read option is going to change the world. Oh, it's college football now. Well, no, it's not. It was for a couple of days, and then they figured it out. And mind you, I'm not burying the Eagles. It's just that was some of the hardest football I've ever had to put my eyeballs on. And I started Sam Bradford.
You know what it seemed like they needed? They needed a guard
in offense.
They needed a guard that could be, you know, someone like an Evan Mathis.
Too smart for your own good.
Maybe an Evan Mathis could have helped them out a lot.
I don't think DeMarco enjoyed being met in the backfield 4 or 5 yards deep, and then he was so jacked up he wanted to try to make a play every time, and so that meant like instead of like taking the yard, he went back about 3.
Well, his bros were just trying to say what's up. You know, it was a reunion.
Like Dan Bailey. Did you see Bailey on the sideline?
Dan Bailey just wanted to say, "Hey, DeMarco, how are you doing? I'm really glad to see you."
I told my guys to give you big hugs.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dan Bailey knew that there was no amount of penalties that would allow Philadelphia to win the game. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about some more stuff. If you want to follow the show, you can do so on Twitter at the FF Ballers. Make sure you check out the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. You could submit questions, read articles, check out our rankings each and every week. And visit us on jointhefoot.com, our fantasy football community. You can talk to fellow Foot Clan members. It's cool. Got to check it out. We are broadcast on the Fantasy Sports Network. You can, we'll wave to the camera there. And you can find us on YouTube. Make sure you go to YouTube and subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. It helps us out. Subscribe on iTunes as well. Well, guys, I have a quick question for you. And it is the question that I'm sure everyone wants to know. Everyone has asked it on Twitter about so many different guys. But what early fantasy pick, and when I say early fantasy pick, I mean somebody that was drafted fairly high, or at least thought highly of. What early fantasy pick are you most worried about after week 2?
I'm not.
That
I'm
is
not-
the panic alarm.
This is not a full blown panic alarm, but I have concerns about the usage of Justin Forsett, and the reason why it's not a full panic alarm is because if you watch him, he's still good. He's still productive.
Didn't he have 5.4 a carry yesterday or something?
It was I don't remember off the top of my head, but he had a good stat line, but he only got 55% of the touches.
Yeah, and Taliaferro seemed like he's the goal line guy.
Yeah, well, he wasn't on the goal line, but I mean, it was still.
Well,
a
he was in
9-yard
all the
run.
goal line.
He was in the
packages.
red zone.
He was in the packages for the.
So that's where it's concerning for Justin Forsett is that he's not getting outplayed into his spot, but they're just using a strange thing from Mark Trestman. He's using multiple RBs.
For me, there's a couple guys that were drafted higher than him that I would be worried about, C.J. Anderson's. But I have to say that I'm worried about Lamar Miller because he was kind of one of those guys that late in the preseason I started to come really strong on and believed in because I believed that Miami was going to utilize him the way that they have said that they would, and they're still not getting him the ball at all. But I have to say, when he's had the ball, he hasn't looked that good anyways. He honestly looked like disinterested. Like, DeMarco Murray went off and was like, "Give me the ball, I'm so angry." Lamar Miller looked like he was, because they weren't using him week one, he's like, "I'm just going to walk this one. I'm going to grab this ball. I'm just going to walk it."
10 for 14. That's walking numbers.
It's not good.
I'm far more concerned about Lamar Miller than I am Justin Forsett. Justin Forsett still had 15 of the 25 carries. He still averaged 4.5 a carry. He was involved in the passing game a little more. I think they're finding their way with Trestman a little bit. They're 0-2. There's some concerns that should be present there. They could really use another wide receiver named Brashad Perryman to show up, or somebody.
They could
that
really
isn't Crockett Gilmore.
They could really use Mark Trestman to use his own system.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
Dump the ball to Forsett.
Yeah, because he'll make something happen. All right, the guy for me that I think I was resistant to, but I don't think he has the weapons, and it's Drew Brees. I don't think he has what he needs there. I think that when Drew Brees gets put in this position where his defense has not been very good over 2 games, he's having to try to bring the team back, and he doesn't have Jimmy Graham anymore, and he doesn't have a prime Marcus Colston. And he's missing deep threats. And Brandon Cooks, to be honest with you, I mean, his numbers that he put up yesterday were mostly garbage time numbers. Not involved very much. He's not a big guy, and Brees likes to throw it up for some of those big guys. So I am concerned about Drew Brees. I mean, week 1, I think he was the 13th best quarterback.
Yeah, but
this week, even worse.
I was thinking about that in week 1. I watched that game and I was like, how did he get 350 yards or whatever? But so many of those were just on dump-off screens.
Which the Cardinals were not covering.
Right. And so I feel like I'm paying the price here because I was Mr. Anti-Drew Brees all offseason, spoke down about him, and then I ranked him number 1 this week.
You both did. You both had him number 1.
Well, he's going up against Tampa, which we have to say.
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
I called you crazy,
You called
Andy.
me crazy on the air. And then I
did.
got a bunch of tweets going, it's coming true.
Tampa Bay. You
I
called
told you.
the upset. The upset of upsets.
Sometimes I read the schedule and I get a feeling about a game. And I'm going to make that prediction again this week on something. But I'm not going to force it. It's got to come to me. But yeah, Tampa took care of business. The Saints are 0-2. And a better game for Winston. Things balance out. All 3 of the guys that we said would come crashing down to earth, by the way, came plummeting to earth. Marcus Mariota had an okay game by the end of it. Alex Smith was Jason's and had a ridiculously terrible Thursday. And then Mike said Keenan Allen. And Keenan's like, I'll show you crashing back to earth.
I'm going negative fantasy
fumble,
points.
I will fumble and then do nothing else. All right, let's get into the rewind.
Weekly Rewind.
All right, we got to get right into the injury news because there are a lot of injuries this week.
Yeah, it was far worse this week than the previous one.
I hate injuries. I hated having to throw Alshon Jeffrey onto my IR spot or my O spot on ESPN because I wanted to see him play.
Yeah.
And now who knows?
Seriously.
I mean, if it took him 3 weeks to maybe play week 1, how long is it going to take him to get back after a second tweak?
And who's throwing him the ball?
Jimmy. That team's terrible. Okay, talk about Jay Cutler, his injury.
Jay Cutler went down with, I believe it was a hamstring and was ruled out immediately. We don't have any further updates yet to know the severity of it. But
How many times has Cutler been hurt chasing a guy who picked him off? I think that's a multiple. That's happened before. I know that. Someone can effort that, but I'm almost positive that's happened
Cutler
before.
needs to go to the Peyton Manning school of interceptions where
Just fall over and let him go?
You throw the pick and then you do the, I'm going to get, no.
Yeah. Well, all right, let's
You're
talk.
just too fast.
Let's talk about another quarterback. The big news yesterday, difficult to see because I think he's just at the top of his game right now, but Tony Romo breaks his collarbone,
Breaks the hearts
clavicle.
of America.
Boy, if you're a Dallas fan, you are now 2-0. You're 2-0
Congratulations.
with Whedon and Terrence Williams leading the way.
Yeah,
and Joseph Randall.
We in Arizona, we experienced that last year.
Yeah?
It didn't turn out very well.
No, I mean, you might get to the playoffs with the way that division's playing.
But Romo, it's a broken clavicle. Romo's going to have more tests on it today to see the severity and what they need to do to fix it. Do they have to?
It took him a while to heal from this the first time around, a little bit longer than the average player goes through this injury, because he's had this. We don't know if it's the exact same break he had before, but it's same shoulder, same bone, so there's a good chance. More news will come out, but remember, last time he missed a solid half a season on this injury. So,
yeah, I heard Aikman on the broadcast yesterday, in between the times that he was talking about this being the worst game he's ever set his eyes upon, which is even funnier because it was the game of the week, and it was not. But he said he recovered in 5 weeks.
Right.
But they're
More
not. I don't think they're expecting that because he's on IR to return.
It was more like the stain of the week.
It was just.
Did you
I
guys-
think hashtag #IVomit was what I used.
Did you guys see the new Troy Aikman commercial?
I don't
No.
think so.
Oh, so, I just got to bring it real quick. So he's in a Circle K of some kind, and there's a fan's like, "Oh man, I'm a huge fan," and Aikman's like, "Oh no, I don't like to dwell on the past, whatever." And then his phone goes off, and his phone tone, his ringtone is a call of him throwing a touchdown. It's like Aikman throws a touchdown, and he pulls it out, just embarrassed, like, I dwell on the past. It's very funny.
That's pretty good. He could probably go in and help him out right now.
seriously.
All right, so let's talk about running backs. And well, hold on. I'm going to stay there for just a split second because this is a fantasy show, obviously. So more than just the news, I want to know the fantasy implications for Dallas because more dependence on the running game has to be there. I thought Randall looked the best with my eyeballs.
Yeah, they gave DMC a lot of work though.
They gave him some series like they've been doing. But to me, every time they needed somebody on the field, it was Joey Randall. He caught the ball. He broke tackles. I mean, he looked better to me. Both guys will get used. Maybe your boy, Christian Michael, will eventually get called up from the practice squad.
For the Foot Clan who wants the Christian Michael update, no, I'm still not dropping him because I haven't.
Yeah, because you spent too much fab on him.
I spent $7 on him.
You wouldn't drop him. I bet if you'd spent no money on him, you'd have dropped him by now.
Yeah, and you also spent a lot of words on him, and I think that helped.
Yeah.
I do not. If you can drop him. I'm just saying for me, because I don't have an impending need for my team, I'm still holding him. Like I haven't bailed out of Christian Michael not getting an opportunity yet.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think what this does for Dallas is it makes them really a matchup dependent play. Most of their guys, Terrence Williams will be all right. I mean, he's a flex type of player. I think
he had a good week.
He didn't have a good week until that last 40-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
He would have been all right, average, and I think that's what you're going to have. You're going to have an all right, average type of flex guy. Same with Joey Randall. There's going to be certain matchups where you go, okay, I like this. They're going to be putting up points. They're going to be in a high scoring game.
here's what I mean. Start some defenses against Dallas because they couldn't get the ball moving very much yesterday. I mean, to Philly's defensive credit, they gave up no touchdowns until that Whedon throw.
Yeah,
the defense gave up 2 field goals the entire game.
I think one thing it's going to do to Dallas, though, is it's going to make them do what they've been trying to do, which is just control the time of possession, just have the ball. And so
That's
maybe
good
they
for
don't
defenses though.
have the other offense with the ball a lot.
It's
and get
good for
worn down.
defenses for them to just. I mean, if they're trying to plod their way along, they're not going to score a lot of points. They're not going to be high flying.
Fair. I just don't think they're going to be like one of those teams where you're going to get 2 pick sixes and maybe.
You ever seen Brad and Whedon play? All right, Eddie Lacy. He got injured last night. He probably killed a lot of people's fantasy teams. Lacy and Devontae Adams went off. Adams came back in but was ineffective. Lacy, what's the situation?
So Lacy injured his ankle. If you saw it, it got rolled on pretty decently. And they X-rayed it. The X-rays came back negative for a break. We don't have we don't know which sprain it. I'm sure it's a sprain, but we don't know if it's a low, if it's a high, what kind of a grade, a sprain or whatever. But I'm expecting Eddie Lacy to miss a few weeks.
Yeah, the current report is expected 2 to 4, but that's too early to really not lock down. James Starks, as you know, we've talked about him in the offseason as one of the better options because he's on a good offense, and he himself has performed in his opportunities. Even against Seattle, he ran pretty well and broke off a decent run, halfway through that game. So he's a guy that tomorrow on our waiver, I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot.
Talk about fab budget for him, priority, what you'd spend, and whether it's worth it. And we'll probably have more Eddie Lacy news by then as well.
Yep.
Carlos Hyde went out of the game yesterday with a head injury. He said he was feeling dizzy, but he got cleared in the concussion protocol. They just didn't bring him back in.
Well, first was his leg, man. His leg took a weird-looking hit, and he went off, but he was quickly back on, which was surprising if you watch the video of it getting hit.
Yeah, when you're getting crushed and your star player has a slight head injury, you don't need to bring him back to the game.
So I'm not that concerned about him.
No, in fact, I already tried to make a trade offer for him in some of our leagues because I think if people didn't watch the game, if they don't understand why he put up low numbers, maybe they think week 1 was just kind of that was the outlier. But I think that this was really one of those games where you got bad numbers because of something that happened.
Well, I will say it might happen again this week because they're going to have to keep up if their defense gives up points. I mean, Arizona has more points scored in the entire league right now, and they're going up against Arizona in Arizona. And if they have to come back again, then Hyde's going to be in the same boat where they don't get to ground and pound their way to a victory like they did against Minnesota.
Didn't he? I think he caught like 4 balls in his limited time, which was I'll look that up, but I was really happy with that from a standpoint of if they get down, what do they do? Granted, Reggie Bush is still gone and he's going to be back, but you bring up a good point. He does not have a good week 3 matchup.
Tevin Coleman was having a good week and was injured. What is the latest on Tevin Coleman's ribs?
We don't have enough. It's Monday, so the injury updates are always slow and hard to get because the teams don't have to give them yet. But he was carted off with ribs, and for a rib injury to be carted off, that doesn't sound good to me. I mean, that just kind of reminds me of when Brandon Marshall got his rib injury last year.
He was on pace. He had 9 for 32 and a touchdown in the game. Now Devontae Freeman has to be owned because he's going to get tons of usage. He actually had a good fantasy day yesterday because he scored a touchdown. He caught some passes. He had terrible yards per carry yet again, but. So if he's in there.
He owes Julio Jones a dozen roses for going down on the 1.
Dude, I would be so much closer in one of my leagues if that didn't happen. That stunk. And Julio Jones, let me just say this. Actually, I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for the StudMuffins. I'm going to save it for the StudMuffins. Just Julio, Antonio Brown, my goodness, they're great. All right, Lamar Miller also got hurt as an excuse for his bad play. No, what did he have, a twisted ankle or something?
Yeah, and he was questionable, and
they say it's minor, that he could have gone. I think I saw that he could have gone back in, but didn't. It was like, what? Then why didn't you go? Why are you lollygagging Lamar Miller? What's going on?
Miami looks very baffled right now, and their play calling has regressed from last year. Tannehill still had a monster game.
Devontae Parker not being involved much yet. Kenny Stills not involved much. Jordan Cameron, is he hurt?
Jordan Cameron is hurt. He had a groin tweak. That
does not sound good.
And he tried to go back in the game and he could not. So Jordan Cameron's probably knowing Jordan Cameron's body,
I know,
and his injury. Luckily, it wasn't a head injury, so that is the good news for Jordan Cameron. But you need to get a backup option.
All right, before we get into this week's Fantasy StudMuffins, I want to tell you about TopDogStats.com. Now that we've got a couple weeks of the season, you can actually start paying attention to trends. We like telling you about tools that are free and exceptionally valuable for your fantasy team. And so I have to tell you about Top Dog Stats because these guys worked with the NFL for 15 plus years developing their analytics platform. And this is the same thing that the NFL scouting teams and game planning teams and salary cap management teams used. And so you have to check this out, topdogstats.com. Simple chart visualizations. You can unlock complex player stats for easy comparisons. So if you want to bring in a couple guys that we've been talking about on the show, see what their stats look like graphed out, super valuable. And you can kind of share those comparisons with your friends on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere. And you can even create a watch list of players and graph them out, and it's pretty cool. I really have enjoyed using it, and now that more stats are coming out week over week, it's exceptionally valuable. So we like telling you about cool fantasy football tools, and so check out topdogstats.com. Compare players, and like I said, it's completely free. It's just another valuable resource for you to use.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I like using it. Also, we know here at the Fantasy Footballers that our lovely men who listen to this show, they take care of their face. We know this from all sorts of tweets and things we've had back. I want to tell you about Harry's. Harry's razors are pretty much the best thing I've ever put on my face. I hate shaving my neck. I don't know if it's common for all men, but my neck gets destroyed by razors. I always try to avoid it, and the razors that come from Harry's, they are fantastic. I haven't had any problems with my neck since having them. And in most times when you get a nice quality razor, you're paying like $32 for an 8-pack of blades. But now with Harry's you get a better shave that respects your skin and your face and your legs and your wallet. No more poor quality blades. There's a starter set. It's an amazing deal. For $15, you get a razor, you get moisturizing shave cream, which is awesome, and 3 razor blades. And with our promo code Footballers, you can get $5 off your first order. So here's what you do. Go to harrys.com now, and Harry's will give you $5 off if you type in our promo code Footballers with your first purchase. That's harrys.com, and enter coupon code Footballers at checkout for $5 off and start shaving better today.
And ladies, my wife used the razor for her legs, and it worked out great. Smooth shave, and she enjoyed it thoroughly, and it's just a great option to save some money and get some razors.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about the StudMuffins for week 2.
This week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
All right, we had some big games out there, but they weren't all from the big players that you'd expect them from. I didn't see these coming, at least the running back core that performed in week 2. But let's start with the quarterbacks. Big Ben cruised his way to a dominant fantasy performance and didn't even need to really try very hard past a certain point in this game.
That offense, man, they look just unstoppable.
Well, they
right
just
now.
traded for this guy named Le'Veon Bell that's going to play next week.
and you know who had a great game? Hayward Bay.
Yeah, he did.
From the depths of fantasy darkness.
He caught 4 of his 5 targets. Not all easy, too.
That is very un-Hayward Bay-esque to catch that high percentage of targets.
Other big-time stud muffins at the quarterback position. Tom Brady performed against that stout Buffalo defense. Derek Carr had a big old game, which I love to see because he's kind of like, my little buddy.
This was the week of the quarterbacks. This is a perfect week. We talked all offseason about how you can stream options. Carson Palmer, we love Carson Palmer. He had such a great game. He threw for 4 touchdowns against Chicago, and in standard 4 points per passing, leagues, he was 13th. He was not one of the top 12, and he had a phenomenal game. I mean, you have Joe Flacco, who did even better, Andy Dalton, who did better, Blake Bortles, who did better, Russell Wilson, Tannehill was awesome, Tyrod Taylor, Derek Carr, all of these guys. Colin Kaepernick was your number 3.
Oh, the garbage man can.
Yes.
Well, that was just for Kaepernick.
Yes, no, I get that. A lot of those. But the point is that quarterbacks, they put up giant numbers, and it's not always who you expect. Yeah, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, they had great weeks, but all of those guys, I don't remember
I would have
a
liked
week.
to have started anybody but Sam Bradford.
Sammy Biscuits.
Sammy Biscuits.
It looks like, so the quarterbacks, 8 from quarterback 8, which was Rodgers, through 16, which was that Stafford.
Yeah.
They were separated by about 3 points.
Yeah, it just speaks to the value of
You
streaming
can find
quarterbacks.
quarterbacks.
Yeah. All right, wide receivers. Larry Fitzgerald emerged,
Larry!
which is great as a Cardinal fan. They put up 48 points. He had 3 touchdowns. I was most excited about the fact Carson on the flea flicker play just threw it up to him, like old Larry
I was going
Fitzgerald.
to say for those who watched the Cardinals. I think that was a playoff game, right? The infamous flea flicker.
Oh yeah, Eagles
where
and the Falcons.
It
They did
looked
twice.
It looked exactly like that play where Warner just said, "Screw this, Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, he's
you
pretty
catch
good.
this ball," and that's what Carson Palmer is doing. Larry Fitzgerald, resurging. I mean, we talked about him, how his numbers with a healthy Carson Palmer, and Carson Palmer, man, is just scorching the earth. I can't remember how many wins it was in his last games, but it's like 20-plus wins in 25 attempts or something. His win percentage is insane. And Larry Fitzgerald looks like he's back in the at least wide receiver 2 discussion weekly.
I agree. So let's talk about the 2-0. These teams went a combined 2-0 this week. The Oakland Raiders and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
And they both had quarterbacks that played well and wide receivers that played well.
I got a text message from a Mr. Crabtree.
Yeah?
And he has demanded an apology.
Well,
From you?
I
Andy.
will not comply. I'm not apologizing to Michael Crabtree for having a good game once every couple of years.
All right. You like Derek Carr so
I did
much.
get a tweet that someone was mad at us because somebody on this show told him to sit Amari Cooper.
That wasn't me.
I think it was Jason.
It might have been. I wasn't too high on him the week before, and I think what I said. Actually, I do remember this now. I said that Derek Carr, his thumb was hurt. We don't know how. That was like on Monday though. Derek Carr was fine all through the week. Early on, it was looking like he might not even play the next week. In which case, I would certainly have sat Amari
This
Cooper.
email said, "Thank you for the solid fantasy advice."
Well,
You're welcome.
He is welcome. If you also followed our fantasy advice this offseason on one of my and Mike's favorite guys, Mr. Robinson, the target monster himself.
Mr. Robinson.
He had a pretty good game.
If you watch, I watched that whole game. Bortles, they took some chances with him. They let him air it out a little bit, and it paid off because you have some elite weapons on that team, and Robinson stood out. He high-pointed the ball. He almost made a couple other catches. And what was his final stat line on the game?
His final stat line, he had 155 yards, 2 touchdowns on 6 receptions, and he also had another 30-yard grab, which was great. And they said he pushed off.
Yeah,
but he didn't push off.
Not push off.
He makes great separation. He is a very good route runner, a very physical guy. So, I mean, maybe he gets that call. But he was also wide open for some of those other passes because he gets open, and that's what you want.
All right, running backs, not the crew you expected at the top. These are the top 4 running backs in week number 2. D'Angelo Williams, Matt Jones, Dion Lewis, and Adrian Peterson. Now
Peterson was 4?
Yeah.
This is in that's a half-point PPR format. But can you explain that kind of madness?
No. I mean, D'Angelo Williams was on the strength of many
3 touchdowns.
And Pittsburgh was just destroying. Matt Jones is the question. What happened in Washington where Alf still had more snaps and it didn't seem Alfred Morris had a great week 1, but Matt Jones has apparently just played his way into the rotation because he almost had as many snaps as Morris this week.
So who's the better option
I would
going
say for fantasy owners
between Dion Lewis and Matt Jones? Dion Lewis has had a good week 2 weeks in a row. Everyone was afraid when LeGarrette Blount comes back he wasn't going to be used, but he's clearly in that Vereen role. He's getting those passes.
The answer is Dion Lewis.
You think it's I would say
clearly Dion Lewis. He has a specific role carved out for him as opposed to a rotational role with Matt Jones, and he has a much better offense.
Would you be able to start Matt Jones this next week?
Would I be able to start Matt Jones
Flex.
this next week?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't have the confidence? What about you, Mike?
Nope.
I would start him as a flex.
You would start Matt Jones.
As a flex.
I mean, nobody was injured, and he got 19 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's tough. I see Andy's side, though.
Seems like an overreaction to me.
Yeah,
Not at all. His play time is growing, and I'd be willing to flex him.
Well, after one game
Yeah.
on a bad offense.
Why would you? You're talking about your flex position where you're grabbing the lowest possible starter from your bench.
Yeah, I guess I think
I
more
try to
highly.
find
I think
my
more
highest
highly.
possible
I know.
starter.
I think more highly of my flex than you do, Mike. That's the reality.
I'm talking about compared to the rest of your starting roster. I'm not saying I take the worst player on my bench and plug him in, but I'm saying that Matt Jones has flex appeal.
Okay.
he's flexy.
And
we can disagree. We can disagree. It's all right. Adrian Peterson came back. They gave him the ball a lot.
He gave the ball to the other team as well.
Well, okay. So you're obviously not putting him in your flex. You'll bench him.
No, I'm not putting him on my flex because he's my running back 1.
Oh, okay. So Adrian Peterson had a good game for all the owners that were a little worried last week. I want to read you the tight ends that had good weeks this week and show you exactly why tight ends are what they are. Crockett Gilmore, Rob Gronkowski, Anthony Fasano, Tyler Eifert, Eric Ebron, and Richard Rodgers are the top 6 performers at tight end. That just goes to show that if you don't have one of the top 2 or 3, you're pretty much pulling a name out of a hat. Am I wrong?
No, not at all. And of these guys who is interesting to me, I guess Davy Crockett Gilmore is okay, but I think that's more a product of the Raiders. The Raiders are the new tight end team to target.
2 touchdowns for Gilmore, 2 touchdowns for Eifert the week before.
Yeah, I'm not saying this week because Cleveland is taking on Oakland, but Richard Rodgers is an intriguing name to me if Eddie Lacy's going to miss time. I don't know who the 3rd running back is up in Green Bay. You guys happen to know?
The 3rd running back up in Green Bay?
Because
not right now.
Because of guys who were active of running backs once Eddie Lacy went down, there was Starks and John Kuhn. There was no other running backs dressed for the game.
Well, that explains that.
And a guy who was getting some snaps in the backfield, not to be a runner, but to help out with blocking and then leak out for passes, Richard Rodgers.
Well, yeah, that was strange though, because Devontae Adams went out, and then they were running that weird. Aaron Rodgers had identified a weakness in that Seattle defense, and it was that kind of weird quick screen. Ty Montgomery on one side, Richard Rodgers on the other. Like, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I think Rodgers needs to be paid attention to when you have weapons that are falling down all over the field, which is what was currently happening. What are your thoughts on Devontae Adams? Because he hasn't really flashed at all in these 2 games.
I think what you see is he's still a predominant target. He still had plenty of targets, but his yards per catch are just minuscule right now. He's not breaking anything long. Now, that could have very easily been the fact that he's going up against Seattle.
Well, he was shut down by Sherman for most of the game.
Yeah.
A head-to-head matchup.
Yeah, but, well, Sherman was on Devontae, I would say, the
majority of the time.
Yeah, a good amount of time. So that could obviously be part of the problem. Honestly, Ty Montgomery looked to me like he should be in that 3rd role. And then, of course, we've got James Jones, who gets another touchdown, almost 2, and yet I think, 3 targets? It's like, does he only get touchdown targets?
That's what he gets. And that's, so you're...
Let me ask you, Mike.
I'm going to give him the same apology I gave Michael Crabtree, which is none.
I think by the end of the season, you're going to owe Michael Crabtree a bigger apology.
Oh, yeah. Well, of all the things that you've ever said to me, that's one of the least I'm ever worried about. All right, let's go ahead and talk about some guys that didn't perform.
Pooped in his big boy pants.
Well, there were plenty of them. Let's start with the choo-choo train. Amir Abdullah and the entire Detroit running game.
You write Amir Abdullah in here, but you don't write Joik Bell?
Well, lead back. You got to talk about the lead back.
Oh, now he's the lead back.
This is pooped in his big boy pants. I don't know the Joik Bell. I mean, he's got big boy pants.
Genuinely, this is about not meeting expectations. And if the expectations for Amir Abdullah, I believe, were more than 6 carries for 9 yards.
I can agree with that.
I looked this up. If you take out Matt Stafford running, who, by the way, Matt Stafford was by far the best rusher on the Detroit Lions. If you take him out, they had 12 carries as a team across Riddick, Bell, Amir Abdullah for 18 total yards.
Whew, that's really nice.
That's why they're 0-2.
Man, that's like old school Matt Stafford years where we're not running the ball. We're just going to throw it 50 times every game.
17 targets to Calvin Johnson.
Yeah.
That's a makeup right there.
In the first half, he actually had very, very few. So I think Calvin Johnson pulled a DeMarco Murray, but he kept it into the locker room.
Like a respectable Calvin Johnson would do.
Yes.
Speaking of DeMarco Murray, his name's on my list here with Sam Bradford. Bradford salvaged his stat line with one...
the garbage man can.
Just completely... They should have just ended the game. They just cut the feed, taken everyone off the field. Instead, he gets a 2-minute drive, and Jordan Matthews collects some garbage time points.
Jordan Matthews won me a week in one of my leagues because of that touchdown.
You know how annoying that is when you're on the other side of the garbage time points?
It is the worst.
It's the worst because you've the other guy, he's not played well.
Yeah,
he's failed the entire game. He's done exactly what you hope to see, and then this trash minute of the game comes out. I feel like the last 3 minutes of a game that's a blowout is like playing in week 17 for your fantasy league, where it's just not legitimate. So we're just going to, from now on, I'm starting a new website, and it's going to have fantasy football, and it only plays until the 3 minutes left in the game.
If the lead is a certain amount of points.
Right, the game ends fantasy-wise. All right, some other running backs that stunk. C.J. Anderson on Thursday, Lamar Miller, Rashad Jennings, Jeremy Hill. Are you concerned, Mike? Because this is not... There were a lot of things that happened in the Jeremy Hill Cincinnati game that, to me, on the outside, and now I don't have a Jeremy Hill tattoo on my chest, but they would worry me.
There is slight concern. Hill was still 10 for 39, so he wasn't just having an awful day, but you lose 2 fumbles with Hugh Jackson as your offensive coordinator, and you're going to the bench. Now, where it gets really sticky is Gio Bernard had a great game.
20 for 120. And he looked spry. He was quick to the edge. He had another touchdown run that was called back on a holding that didn't really open him up that much.
So the concern is just that Gio's earning more playing time. He has to. You have to get him on the field if he's going to continue to look like this. Jeremy Hill is still, I think, the starting running back. He's still the main goal line guy.
Gio is completely startable in PPR leagues.
Yes. Yeah.
He actually had an okay week 1, too.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
PPR.
He's been solid. He was massively stuffed on the goal line and this was Jeremy Hill had already been benched, and it's just infuriating.
It seemed like a message, like Hill will be back out there doing his normal thing, but Gio's going to be involved.
Yeah.
So I think Gio can even be started in standard leagues because he still gets a lot of yards from those catches.
Keenan Allen, you start him going forward?
Yeah, you still play. Keenan Allen's all about targets, and because he gets
he went from 17 targets to
4.
That's
decrease. That's called a decrease. That's like going from the opposite. He did an opposite of Calvin.
But Keenan Allen's his average depth of target is low. That's kind of how the team uses him. So if he doesn't see a high quantity of targets, he's going to have an average to poor fantasy day unless he happens to score.
Last guy I want to talk about in the pooped in his big boy pants section. Jason, what were your thoughts on Jimmy Graham? Is this what we have to expect from Jimmy Graham, a kind of game plan dependent usage?
Yeah, you can't have any thoughts on somebody that doesn't do anything. He had 1 catch for 11 yards. The scary thing here is Doug Baldwin. I mean, here's what you see from. We've kind of talked last week about Lockett being hampered by the Seattle offense. The Seattle offense does not have enough passing yardage and passing opportunities to go around. So it's either going to be Doug Baldwin or Lockett or Jimmy Graham, but you're not going to have a week where all 3 of those guys are putting up decent numbers because they don't, as a team, ever put up enough to distribute that much around. So Doug Baldwin had the week, but it's not Jimmy Graham.
And Fred Jackson had the touchdown. So it's like, I mean, kind of a just...
Lynch was feeling a little extra tired.
It's just prototypical Seattle. There's nothing else you can say about it. There's just so many opportunities, and if you get the right guy, you score, and if you don't, you don't. So
and Seattle even kind of opened it up in the second half. There was a lot of Russell Wilson. I mean, he ran a lot, but he was throwing the ball even more.
Yeah,
and it is baffling to me that you would give up a lead, an elite center in the NFL, knowing how important centers are, a first-round pick for Jimmy Graham, and then you get him in and you just don't use him. It's pretty much what I expected, but I don't understand. How do you do that? How do you destroy your offensive line and for a guy who can't block, and then you don't throw him the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We kind of expected it, but it's still confusing.
Even
especially
when you're
sitting 0-2 now, which as a Cardinal fan is delightful.
Yeah,
but if you're a Seahawks fan. All right, let's take a few minutes. I want to preview the Monday night game before we end the show today. The Jets at the Colts. I'm very excited to see this game. Initial thoughts, fantasy landscape for the game.
Well, the first thing is
sit here.
The first thing is Ivory. Is he going to play tonight? And all news was pointing to that he will.
Yeah, they pretty much confirmed that.
But even with confirmation of that, there was a lot of people asking Ivory questions yesterday. We were saying grab Bilal Powell if you have a spot, because then you can wait till Monday night.
That's what I did.
And And now, if Chris Ivory doesn't hit play, I think Bilal Powell is a fine play.
He actually had an okay game last week. 12 carries or something like that.
And so but we've also gotten a lot of questions of I need this many points to win tonight. Brandon Marshall or Andre Johnson. I've gotten quite a few of those. So let's
answer that. Yeah, that's a great one. Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, and that's where I seem to lean.
I'm going Andre Johnson. Mostly because I'm playing against Brandon Marshall in some of my leagues, and I need him to
really
score
good advice from Jason.
No, but honestly, T.Y. Hilton, right?
Yeah,
he might play, he might not, but if he does play, I think Andre Johnson is going to have more opportunity than Brandon Marshall. So, I mean, I've got Fitzmagic as my stream of the week. So
Sit Eric Decker.
Start.
Oh, Eric Decker that's a great point. Besides Revis, as Jason likes to call him, Darren Revis, my good friend Darren.
Is that the Allstate commercial where you have Chris Paul and his brother? So they got you got the Revis brothers.
Yeah,
I'm saving you with the Allstate here. State Farm, that's what it is. It's State Farm.
Under the bus with you, Jason. Besides Revis, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the wrong team. Besides Davis on the Colts,
Vontae Davis.
Besides Vontae, the other top two cornerbacks for the Colts are going to miss the game. So if Revis is on,
you mean if Davis? Are you okay?
I'm baffled right now. If Davis is shutting down Brandon Marshall, there should be some extra good looks for Eric Decker tonight.
Are you starting Moncrief tonight?
Yes,
tonight.
Yeah, I don't expect Hilton to play.
Are you starting Dorsett?
No.
Are you starting Kobe Fleener?
No.
Are you starting Allen?
If you have him, you're playing him.
Yeah.
You're not picking.
What about that Andrew Luck fellow?
Yeah.
Did you guys see the new DirecTV commercial with skinny legs, Peyton Manning?
I have not yet.
I hadn't seen that one. That was pretty funny.
As a man who has very skinny legs, I'm very offended, and they will be getting a letter.
Before we end the show, I have to get to one very important matter.
Splash.
That is directed at you two gentlemen.
I hope you're happy.
Hold on. I believe your name is Jason. You're Marcus Mariota. Mm-hmm. And Mike, you are Tyrod Taylor. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I am the victor.
Garbage man.
I am the victor.
You're the garbage man.
Yeah, I hope you're happy.
The garbage man can.
After my whole tirade on garbage time, it has won me this bet, our three-way bet last week. So Colin Kaepernick comes out on top.
There
Barely.
was one more bet.
There was another bet, and I lost it.
Oh, you were just going to gloss over that?
Are we talking about the Emmanuel Sanders bet from Thursday?
No, we're talking about Percy Harvin. And I actually don't know the answer to this.
I know the answer.
Did he have 4 catches?
Yeah.
Then you, sir, are wet. Yeah.
You know, it was so close.
Splash.
I made the mistake. That was not the right line. It should have been winning with 5, neutral with 4. But hey, I'll take it.
Yeah,
Percy Harvin,
I was very close with Tyrod Taylor, who played a legitimate game.
He played good.
And and Taylor had one of those end of the first half throw it up interceptions, which is
excellent
garbage
for the bet. All right, tomorrow we're going to go over the Monday Night Football game. We're going to talk about the waiver wire, give you some guys that you need to be signing for your roster so you can come out of your 0-2 hole. No, hopefully you're not 0-2.
No,
not at all.
If you are, you're still in it. Don't overreact.
Yeah. I mean, the way I always look at that, and maybe it's just because I'm just such a rosy character. Isn't that how you describe me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that whatever's happened can happen in reverse. If you're 0-2, you can just come out and win a couple games every week to week. I mean, it's not like it's a streak. You're rolling out different guys.
We need a deep thoughts segment from Andy.
Yeah, that really wasn't one. News and notes we'll talk about tomorrow. More injury updates. We'll go through the mailbag and we'll get you all up to speed for week 3 this week. Any other parting thoughts, guys?
Joik Bell played just 18 offensive snaps.
Oh, there's the outro button. Got to hit the outro button before we talk Joik Bell, right?
Whatever can happen in reverse.
That's right.
That's like when Joik...
Does that mean Joik can have like 38 carries next week? See you guys.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com and follow us on Twitter at the FF Ballers.